good day. Now we are in the module number 6 of second quarter. We have the same learning competency, analyzing literature as a means of understanding and changing values in the VUCA world. So we will start on page number 3. This module provides varied activities that will help you learn and analyze literature as a means of understanding and changing values in the VUCA world. At the end of this module, you are expected to first differentiate free verse and rhymed verse poetry. Second, use tips in analyzing poetry. And the last one, analyze poetry as a means of understanding the unchanging values in a changing world. So in what I know part, you will, in numbers 1 to 10, you will just choose among the 4 choices. It's letter A, B, C, or D. It's depending on what is being asked in each item. But you have to analyze the poems inside the illustration. The world is changing faster than we could ever imagine. Happenings are uncertain, unpredictable as it seems, but Mom says keep going. And then we have another literary piece here. Then you will read those and answer the following questions. And then in letter B, inside the box, put a check mark if the statement is correct. Otherwise, put a cross mark X if it is incorrect. So you will just write, or you will draw a box on your answer sheet, then put a check mark or cross mark if it's correct or incorrect, after analyzing if those statements are true or not. Second one will be what's in. So in our previous module, we had discussion about the prose. And when we say prose, it is not having particular specific structure, sound, or any strict consideration of things. However, in opposition, poetry, it is different from prose, for it uses words and language that is structured to evoke a writer's feelings and thoughts. The main purpose of writing a poem is to convey an idea or emotion in beautiful language. It paints a picture of what the poet feels about a thing, person, idea, concept, or even an object. So in what's in part, from the illustration below, write 5 things that describe the world we have now. So as you can observe, as you can see, because you are the one also experiencing what is happening in the world, you will write 5 things that describe world nowadays. So again, when we say poetry, it is somehow structured, strict in implementing different considerations. So proceed. Going to the next one, what's new? So we have here the meaning of VUCA. When you say VUCA, it stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So the first one will be the volatility. So it is the speed of change in the world. The more volatile the world is, the more and faster things change. So when you say volatility, it is how fast the time runs, how changes happen in a world, because we know that the world is facing changes, and changes are really inevitable. We cannot stop, no one can stop changes because it's a part of our life. And if we know how to cope to changes, therefore we will understand the true meaning of life, how to go on, how to move on, how to proceed, and how not to give up, for us to achieve our goals despite of changing world. And the second one, uncertainty. It is the extent to which we cannot confidently predict the future. The more uncertain the world is, the harder it is to predict, because no one can exactly predict what will happen to the entire future. Maybe we can control the present for us to have a better future. However, still, there are things that we cannot control, that we cannot really predict what will happen. Even though you are doing your best today, we can infer that there will be something better in the future, but we cannot tell exactly what will happen in the future. So that is uncertainty, meaning you cannot tell, you cannot predict what will happen in the future. We can infer, but we cannot exactly tell. Complexity. It is the number of factors that we need to take into account, their variety, and the relationships between them. The more complex the world is, the harder it is to analyze. So when we say complexity, it is the things that, because it is difficult to understand, because there are many things that we cannot explain, that we cannot understand fully. So that is complexity. The world is somehow not really explained well. There are situations in our life that we cannot tell the reason. We cannot state why things are happening, because it is complex. We cannot tell the exact reason why things are happening. But we know that there are reasons, but it is not yet given, it is not yet stated, but there is. But it's complex. Ambiguity, it is the haziness of reality, the potential of misreads, and the mixed meanings of conditions, the cause and effect confusion. When we see ambiguity, it is the sense of being unclear or not clear. It is somehow vague, that we cannot really directly say, understand things because of complexity maybe. And there are situations in our life that are really not clear because we cannot tell what is happening, why thing is happening. So that's ambiguity. That's part of our life, that despite of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, we should know how to cope up, we should know how to adjust, and we should know how to move on and go on for us to succeed in life. So it is important to still hold on to our values. So despite of changing world, we should remain having our values, because values is something, or values are something that we can, or something that we will hold to, for us to become better, for us to become strong in a changing world, because values are really essential for us human, because these are the things that will make us remarkable, that will make us distinct from one another, because there are values that you have and there are values that you don't have but others have. So values also help us to cope up with the changes in the world. So we have kinds of values, the personal values and cultural values. It is very easy to understand when you say personal meaning in each individual there is a personal belief about what is right, about what is wrong, what should be considered as moral, what should be not. So when you say personal values, it's your own opinion, it's your own personal value, your own stand about the things. For example, what do you think the values a person should have? For example, that you are believing that each person should, or each family should eat together. But there are people who are not believing or who are not doing this. But it's your own personal value, meaning of personal value, there are really times that you are doing that value, but other people are not. Meaning, it is not universal, it is not common. Maybe for some people, it is usual, but there are people who will be different in terms of your values. But when we say cultural values, it is a wider values because it is accepted by religions or societies and reflect what is important in each context. So when we say cultural values, it is part of a culture. And when we say culture, there are many people who are accepting that, who are believing in that. For example, religion. So all of those believers in particular religion, there will be a certain values, meaning there are more people who are believing in it. Unlike in personal, it's your own. But when I say cultural, there are more people who are believing it. In terms of religion, society, for example, in your society or in your barangay, you have a value which you should give what you have. Being generous, the sense of generosity, that can be a values that accepted, which makes your barangay distinct to other barangays. So that will be values. So directions: read and analyze a stanza from a poem entitled VUCA World and note details of it by answering the questions that follow. The future is like a present. You will be surprised with what you will get. Uncertain tomorrow, ever-changing as it flows. Accept it just the way it goes. So, you will answer the following questions about the poem. Number 1, what is the stanza all about? Number 2, what is the purpose of the poem? To describe, amuse, entertain, narrate, inform, express grief. When I say express grief, meaning the sadness, maybe because of you lost someone, like that, or someone was died and you are very close to him or to her. Celebrate or commemorate. And how do you say so? So you will just, in number 2, you will just choose among this, then explain why do you say so, that it is like that. It is the purpose of the poem. What is the stanza all about? After reading, what do you think is the message of this stanza? Number 3, what is the tone of this stanza of the poem? Was it sad, happy, melancholy, or bitter? So you will choose among these, then explain. Then number 4, are there rhymes present in this stanza? If yes, list down words that rhymes. When you say rhymes, it is depending on the word placed in the last part of each line. So we have line number 1, line number 2, line number 3, line number 4. But we can also consider the internal rhyme. When we have internal, when we say inside the lines. If there are words which are rhyming within the line. But when we say external, it is, or these are the words which are rhyming at the last part of each line. Meaning, each line, each word, last word of the lines, for example, present, get, flows, goes, are there words or are they rhyming? Are they sounding the same? So that will be external. When we say external, the last words of each line. But when we say internal, the words that we can find inside line. So you will place, if there are rhyming words, you will include or you will write it in number 4. Then number 5, what does the stanza of the poem want to convey? What do you think is the author's purpose? Or what do you think is the thing that the poem wants you to know? That would be for number 5. So what is it? We will proceed now to the discussion proper. So analyzing literature as a means of understanding and changing values in the VUCA world. So we have here the free verse and rhymed poem. But when we say again, prose and poetry, when we say prose, these are the short story, the essay, autobiography, biography, or those literary texts that not strict in terms of rhyme, in terms of numbers of words, in terms of particular structure. Because prose, we have sentences, we have paragraphs. But in poetry, we have stanza, we have lines, we have rhyming words in some types. For example, free verse, it doesn't require rhyming words. But when you say rhymed poem, from the word itself, rhymed, meaning they should be rhyming. So those are the differences between the poetry and prose. And the major categories of poetry, the free verse and the rhymed poem. When we say free verse, it is a literary device that can be defined as poetry that is free from limitations of regular meter or rhythm that does not rhyme with fixed forms expression. Okay, you might be confused. It is not following any rhyme. Therefore, it can be under prose. No, it cannot be. Because when we say free verse, it is using lines or stanza, not sentences, not paragraph. So, if you will see stanzas, you will see lines and not paragraph essay. Therefore, it will be poetry. But if it is in sentences form, paragraph form, therefore, it will be prose. So that will be the major difference between the two. So the free verse example, remember that we are not alone in this battle. Change the way we treat each other, do things with kindness, live with a grateful heart. All this shall pass in silence. As you can see, each line is centered, meaning they are not having indentation, the margins like that, because it is stanza through stanza and line. How do we call this one? Line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4, line 5. And those 5 lines, the group of 5 lines, we can call it as stanza. Again, stanza as a whole, then each of them will call as a line. So what did you observe in free verse? We have here battle, other, kindness, heart, silence. Are they rhyming? No, because it's a free verse. But they are written in stanza form, in line form, but they are not rhyming. Therefore, they are still under poetry, but free verse, not rhyming. But when we say rhymed poem, it is a work of poetry that contains rhyming vowel sounds at particular moments where common vowel sounds are also known as assonance. So when we say assonance, it is the vowel sound, not the vowel letters only, but the vowel sounds are common. That is assonance. Remember that. That's a figure of speech. Assonance. They are the same with the vowel sounds. Again, they can be the same with vowel letters, but they cannot be the same in vowel sounds. For example, apple, the letter A, it sounds as a, apple. But when we say mate, the letter A in mate, it is sounding A, mate, like that. Long A and the short A. They are the same, but we have same letter, but they are not the same with the sound. So we cannot call it as assonance. We can call it assonance if they have the same sound. Same letter, same sound. Here is an example of a rhymed poem. because it has rhyming vowel sound found at the end of each line called end rhyme. So when you say end rhyme, these are the external rhyme that we can find here at the end of each line. So the only difference between free verse and rhymed poem, there are rhyming words at the end. Free verse, it is in stanza form, it is in line form, but they don't have rhyming words. So the similarity, the things that they have the same is they are written in stanza form, they have lines, but the difference will be free verse does not have rhyming words rhymed. Poem has. Saying po and opo as a sign of respect, a particular of culture we must protect. This habit must be kept because our roots it reflects. So we can hear that there are rhyming words. Respect, protect, like that. And now, we have the poetry analysis. So when you say poetry analysis, this is how we analyze, how we critique, how we understand a poetry. It is the process of investigating a poem's form, content, structure, and history in an informed way, with the aim of heightening one's own and others' understanding and appreciation of the work. So when you say poetry analysis, from the title, from the history, from the poet, from all of the information, from all of the details that you can consider, you will all analyze it for us to form and create the final analysis of a particular poem. So we have 6 tips in analyzing poem. Number 1, read the poem aloud. So you will read it aloud or with sounds. So this will give you the experience of a poem. Try to figure out the most effective way to perform it. So you will perform it with conviction, with correct sound, with emotion. So maybe you can hear yourself or others can hear you. So that will be the read the poem aloud. Simply, you will just read the text. Number 2, read the title. Think about the title and how it relates to the poem. Titles often provide important clues about what is at the heart of a piece. So when we say title, it is the glimpse of the whole text, of the entire literary text. So you should always consider that the title has a big factor for us to know the message or the context of the poem. Number 3, understand the speaker. Understanding the speaker is at the center of a poem. It may help this piece appear more tangible and you will be able to imagine a person behind the language. So if you will put yourself in the shoe of the poet, you will also, or the speaker, you will also determine what is the feeling. For example, the poem is all about brokenness, about sadness. If you will be the speaker experiencing the same thing, the particular issue in the text, what will you feel? So you will also know the, not the exact, but similar feelings, understanding as the same as the author or the speaker or the poet. The number 4, identify the mood and tone. It is important to address the attitude or mood the poem is attempting to convey. It helps in understanding the message of the poem. So we should identify the tone and the mood. So we should also know the difference between the two. When we say tone, it is the author's attitude towards the topic. But when we say mood, okay, it's not written here, but when you say mood, it's your own perception. It's your how you understand, how you feel about it. But when you say tone, it is given by the author. It is not based to the readers, but it is the tone, the attitude of the author itself on how he or she presented the text. That is the tone from the author. But when we say mood, how we interpret, how we feel upon reading, upon comprehending the text. Number 5, look for literary devices. So when we say literary devices, these are the figures of speech. Know how the writer created meaning in their poem. Look for common techniques and try to understand what they are representing. So when we say poem or poetry, there are tricks, meaning the message is not shallow. You have to understand it deeply. You have to extract all of the clues before knowing the real meaning, the real context of the text. And one way that the author or the poet is using is the literary devices. These are the figures of speech. For example, simile, used when something is made to be like something else. It uses like or as, so it's very common for us because when we say simile, you are comparing two things using the word like or as. So if you will see the word like or as, it is using simile. But when you say metaphor, they are also comparing but without using like or as, directly or direct comparison between two objects. For example, the poem is like a word salad. There is a word like. The poem is compared to a word salad. But here, the poem read was a word salad. It is compared directly. How did we say directly? Because it is not using the word like or as, like this one. So if there is a word like or as, it is simile. But if you directly compared it without using the words like or as, it is metaphor. Simply as that. Then imagery. When you say imagery, it is the language used by poets, novelists, and others. So when we say imagery from the word image, how will you make an image without any illustration? It is the use of imagery. When we say imagery, you will make your readers believe, imagine, what are they reading. For example, the taste of an ice cream. How will you explain? How will you describe for them to feel, to taste the ice cream, even they are just reading it? So it is your challenge how you will let your readers use their imagination based on your details, descriptions that will affect their senses. So that is imagery. Then the last one, identify the theme. Get to the core of what the poem is about by identifying its theme. The theme of a poem relates to a universal truth, issue, or conflict. To determine the theme, look over your entire analysis and connect the dots. What is the subject? Or what is the thing being talked about? Who is the speaker? Is he the victim? Is she the victim? Or else, what do you think is the speaker? Is he or she the antagonist, the protagonist? Like that. What situation are they in? For example, you can consider also the history. Is it written or was it written during what period? Is it colonialization, after war, or like that? So it also considers the story during that time. So how do you feel about the subject? What is the mood? So when you say mood, it's the how you feel upon reading it. So identify the theme. These are the questions that will help you to identify the theme. Is it all about the tragedy, about love being broken, like that? Or is it about death? Or it's about celebration? You will determine it upon knowing these questions. So great, now that you are knowledgeable about poetry, you are now prepared for your next set of tasks. But before we proceed to independent activities and assessments, we will generalize it. When we say prose and poetry, prose, it is using sentences, paragraphs. But when we say poetry, it is using lines and stanzas, which is more strict poetry, because poetry, it is using rhyming words or structure. However, in prose, there are no rhyming words. And the examples or types of prose, it can be short story, novels, essay, autobiography, biography, diary, like that. But when we say poetry, it can be free verse or rhymed poem. When we say free verse, it has no rhyming words, however, it uses lines and stanzas. But when we say rhymed poems, we have external rhyme, internal rhyme or end rhyme, external rhyme or end rhyme, or internal rhyme that make the sound more appealing. They are having assonance or rhyming words. And we have 6 tips. Read the poem aloud, read the title, understand the speaker, identify the mood and tone. When you say mood, it's upon the reader. When you say tone, it's already given by the author or the poet. 5, look for literary devices or the figures of speech. It can be simile, metaphor, imagery. When we say imagery, these are the things that appeal to the senses of human. Sense of sight, smell, touch, taste, like that. So identify the theme by knowing this, by answering these questions, so you will know the theme. So in independent activity number 1, on the space provided before each number, write true if the statement is correct, then false if it's not. So your answer will be true or false only based on the things stated in each number. So number 1, simile is a literary device used when something is made to be like something else and uses as or like. Is it true or false? So same process until number 5. So independent assessment number 1, differentiate free verse poem and rhyme poem using a Venn diagram. So you will copy this diagram. You can place the title. Do not forget the title of this circle. For example, this circle is meant for free verse. This circle is meant for rhyme poem. And the title, the difference between free verse and rhyme poem. Do not forget the title. So this space will be used for the things that the free verse has, but the rhymed poem does not have. Same thing, rhymed poem has, while the free verse poem doesn't have. And this it is the space that you will use for the similarities of free verse and rhyme. A while ago I explained it, what is the difference, what is the similarity. So you will just apply it. If you really listen to me a while ago, you will answer that, or you can answer that. Then here, in independent activity number 2, you will identify if it's a free verse or rhyme poem. A while ago, I explained how you will identify if it's a free verse or not, or a rhyme poem or not. Then, after writing if it's a free verse or a rhyme poem, you will explain. You can explain it if you listened a while ago. Independent assessment number 2, supply the missing word to complete the tips on how to analyze a poem. Write your answer on the space provided. So this, I explained it a while ago in the discussion part. You will just fill the blanks. These are the tips on how to analyze a poem, how to critique. Then in independent activity number 3, modify true or false. So you will write true if the statements are correct. Then if it's not, you will underline and change the word that makes it incorrect. So you will write your answers on a separate sheet of paper. So it's 1 to 5. Again, for example, number 1 is true. You agreed. You know that it's correct. You will write true. But if you did not agree, you will find the word which makes it incorrect. Then underline it. If you underlined it, you will now put the correct answer. For example, on separate sheet of paper, write first the incorrect word, then underline it. Then the next word will be the word that should be placed to make it correct. Independent assessment number 3, we have the poem entitled VUCA World. So you will read that and you will answer these questions. So we have 5 questions and the answers are depending on how you understand, how you realize, or what did you realize after that. So what are the things that you should consider here? The 6 tips. Read the title, read it aloud, identify the theme, the literary elements or the figures of speech, like that. Then the last part, the what I have learned and what I can do and the additional activities. So in what I have learned, you will just complete the statements. The things that I learned are, what did you learn? The questions I have are, so what are the things that you are still confused? You will write it on a separate sheet of paper. What I can do? So you will make up poetry. Technology and the digital world have most definitely changed our lives and habits. We neglect essentials like sleeping, family time, social interactions, and the likes. The perks of technology and the fear of missing out to modernization and digitization affects our human relationship as well as our values. Where does it end? Is it you has the power to consciously reduce these influences and devote more time on the essential things in life? To always be reminded of your values and pride of being a Filipino as you embrace the changes of the world as what VUCA World brings. Write a 2 to 3 stanza free verse poem that will convey a reminder to yourself to always adhere the importance of the core values such as makadiyos, makatao, makakalikasan, at makabansa. Your output will be graded based on the criteria provided. So we have here, focus on the assigned topic. What is the topic? It's about the values, makadiyos, makatao, makakalikasan, at makabansa, despite of changing world. Because these are the values that should not be fading, that should not be removed. It should always remain in our hearts, in our minds. Because these values will help us to become a better individual, for us to become a better part of our society. Creativity, how did you present it? Then spelling and punctuation. Do you have correct spelling of the words, correct commas, correct periods? Then title, so it should be appealing because it will hook the reader. Imagery, when I say imagery, how did you make your readers imagine what you are saying in the text? Total points will be 25 points. So the assessment, number 1 to 10, you will read it, then answer if it's letter A, B, or C, or D, depending on what's being asked in each item. Then for second part, read and analyze a stanza from a poem entitled VUCA World. Just be strong, my friend. Don't let this change you and bend. Remember where you started. It will guide you to the end. So what do you think the values that the author is wanting to convey as we face volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity of the world? So what do you think is the message despite of VUCA World? Then additional activity, remember that in what I can do part, you composed or you will compose a poem, 2 to 3 stanza poem. Then you will just record it, you will video yourself delivering it. And we have the rubric preparation, physical presence. When you say preparation, you are really prepared and you really rehearsed yourself. Physical present, you have proper posture, gestures, you are relaxed and confident. Then you have appropriate audience contact. When we say audience contact, meaning you are really, like, even though you are recording by yourself, it seems that you are talking to the one who is watching it. Then pausing and pacing. When we say pausing and pacing, proper pause, how you use proper time, proper breaks for us to clearly understand what you are saying. Then clarity and expression, it can be your facial expression, how loud, how clear, how distinct the pitch and tone, the modulation of your voice are really considered effectively. So it is the end of our module. It's mostly about poetry, and I hope that you really learned about it. And if you still have questions, your teachers are always there to guide you. Do not be afraid to ask or have PM, private message, to them, because they will be the ones who can help you. Goodbye and thank you. Stay safe. And do not let the VUCA world distract you, but use it as motivation that despite that the world is changing, changes are inevitable, we can still succeed, we can still achieve our goals.